considered. And finally, the spiritual side is touched upon. We may be pardoned if we express ourselves as pleased with our success in condensing as much yogi lore into so few pages, and by the use of words and terms which may be understood by anyone. Our only fear is that its very simplicity may cause some to pass it by as unworthy of attention, while they pass on their way searching for something deep, mysterious, and non-understandable. However, the Western mind is eminently practical, and we know that it is only a question of a short time before it will recognize the practicability of this work. We greet our students with our most profound salam, and bid them be seated for their first lessons in the yogi science of breath. End of chapter 1. Chapter 2 of the Hindu Yogi Science of Breath by William Walker Acton. Breath is life. Differ as they may upon details of theory and terminology, the Oriental and Occidental agree upon these fundamental principles. To breathe is to live, and without breath there is no life. Not only are the higher animals dependent upon breath for life and health, but even the lower forms of animal life must breathe to live. And plant life is likewise dependent upon the air for continued existence. The infant draws in a long, deep breath, retains it for a moment to extract from its life-giving properties, and then exhales it in a long wail, and lo, its life upon earth has begun. The old man gives a faint gasp, ceases to breathe, and life is over. From the first faint breath of the infant to the last gasp of the dying man, it is one long story of continued breathing. Life is but a series of breaths. Breathing may be considered the most important of all the functions of the body, for indeed, all the other functions depend upon it. Man may exist some time without eating, a shorter time without drinking, but without breathing, his existence may be measured by a few minutes. And not only is man dependent upon breath for life, but he is largely dependent upon correct habits of breathing for continued vitality and freedom from disease. An intelligent control of our breathing power will lengthen our days upon earth by giving us increased vitality and powers of resistance, and on the other hand, unintelligent and careless breathing will tend to shorten our days by decreasing our vitality and laying us open to disease. Man in his normal state had no need of instruction in breathing. Like the lower animal and the child, he breathed naturally and properly, as nature intended him to do. But civilization has changed him in this and other respects. He has contracted improper methods and attitudes of walking, standing, and sitting, which have robbed him of his birthright of natural and correct breathing. He has paid a high price for civilization. The savage today breathes naturally, unless he has been contaminated by the habits of civilized man. The percentage of civilized men who breathe correctly is quite small, and the result is shown in contracted chests and stooping shoulders, and the terrible increase in diseases of the respiratory organs, including that dread monster, consumption, the white scourge. Eminent authorities have stated that one generation of correct breathers would regenerate the race, and disease would be so rare as to be looked upon as a curiosity. Whether looked at from the standpoint of the Oriental or Occidental, the connection between correct breathing and health is readily seen and explained. The Occidental teachings show that the physical health depends very materially upon correct breathing. The Oriental teachers not only admit that their Occidental brothers are right, but say that in addition to the physical benefit derived from correct habits of breathing, man's mental power, happiness, self-control, clear-sightedness, morals, and even his spiritual growth may be increased by an understanding of the science of breath.
Absolutely.
Whole schools of Oriental philosophy have been founded upon this science, and this knowledge, when grasped by the Western races and by them put to the practical use which is their strong point, will work wonders among them. The theory of the East, wedded to the practice of the West, will produce worthy offspring. This work will take up the yogi science of breath, which includes not only all that is known to the Western physiologist and hygienist, but the occult side of the subject as well. It not only points out the way to physical health along the lines of what Western scientists have termed deep breathing, etc., but also goes into the less known phases of the subject and shows how the Hindu yogi controls his body, increasing his mental capacity, and develops the spiritual side of his nature by the science of breath. The yogi practices exercises by which he attains control of his body and is enabled to send to any organ or part an increased flow of vital force, or prana, thereby strengthening and invigorating the part or organ. He knows all that his Western scientific brother knows about the physiological effect of correct breathing, but he also knows that the air contains more than oxygen and hydrogen and nitrogen, and that something more is accomplished than the mere oxygenating of the blood.
Pranayama.
He knows something about prana, of which his Western brother is ignorant, and he is fully aware of the nature and manner of handling that great principle of energy, and is fully informed as to its effect upon the human body and mind. He knows that by rhythmical breathing, one may bring himself into harmonious vibration with nature and aid in the unfoldment of his latent powers. He knows that by controlled breathing, he may not only cure disease in himself and others, but also practically do away with fear and worry and the baser emotions. To teach these things is the object of this work. We will give in a few chapters concise explanations and instructions, which might be extended into volumes. We hope to awaken the minds of the Western world to the value of the yogi science of breath. End of chapter 2.
All right. So, all that being said, I'm going to start. This is, like I said yesterday, I'm going to start on some breath stuff. I'm going back to healing magic, not necessarily healing magic. I think the first magic you need to practice probably is protection magic overall. But when it comes to what's going on right now, healing magic, or the correct breathing and correct water and correct actions basically is protection, because what's happening now is they are using our nervous system, our brains, our breath, our everything against us. And I don't even like saying they, because I don't believe in this elite group technically controlling us, but so many people believe that is a belief, that is real, therefore it does exist on some level. But nonetheless, because I believe you can make a thought form up of an elite Illuminati group, and then people who do things that we classify as, okay, they're doing this, so they're part of that group. We actually put them in that group when they're not even part of that group. You know, they're just, anyways, that's a little more complicated. That's not what I want to talk about. But just to start off, before I started meditating, okay, I had to meditate, and with my ADD and shit like that, I had a hard time quieting my mind. So there was no being able to stare at a point for a while and be able to focus on the point and figure out all the facets of that point, which is outlined in the book Kabbalah, the Great Work of Self-Transformation, and Frederick Xavier tells you to do. I wasn't able to do that. So the first few meditations I did were, some of them were hypnosis / meditations, but probably more like hypnosis. But I was doing the ones online on YouTube, anything I thought worked. And as soon as I found one that worked, I would just use it over and over and over again. But the first time I was able to meditate on my own was when I said, you know what, I'm going to do the breathing shit I learned about. Because I learned about this, and I never really put it into practice. Like, I thought it was fascinating, outstanding, and amazing that you could fix yourself with breath. So when I would think about it, I would breathe through my nose and, you know, feel okay. But it wasn't until I actually laid down. I was laying down. I wasn't sitting up or anything like that. For my meditations, I'm not going to lie, probably 7 times out of 10, I'm straight up laying down. Unless I have to do something soon, then, because normally it's in the morning and at night when I do this shit, when I meditate. But if I'm doing it part of a ritual or part of, I don't know, if I have to go to work or something like that and I want to get some kind of energy, then I'll sit up so I don't fall asleep. Last thing I need to do is fall asleep and not make it into work. But nonetheless, it wasn't until I did correct breathing. It wasn't until I started doing the fourfold breath. And the first time I did it, I was doing the fourfold for the first time I got to a, I don't know if it would be a higher state of consciousness or a different state of consciousness, rather, not a higher state, but a different state of consciousness, was when I was doing the fourfold breath, and then I started holding my breath longer than 4. So you'd breathe in for 4, then you hold that for 4, then you exhale for 4 seconds, then you hold that for 4, okay? A lot of people say that's a great one to do. It's probably your best overall one to do all the time, because understand these types of breathing, as simple as they are and as basic as they are, some of them can do harm at the wrong time, especially the ones that put you into the autonomic nervous system. You kick that one on. Now, we want to kick that one off most of the time, but it's not always just good to have that bitch off, because that bitch is made to protect you. But anyways, so I started holding my breath after the 4 seconds in, obviously, because holding it with no breath in you is a lot harder than holding your breath in when there's breath inside you, obviously. So the first few times I did that, I would hold my breath for, I don't know, after the 50-second mark, I would just stop counting and be like, I'll make the minute, no problem. And then from there, I started going into these different states. Maybe I was blacking out, I don't know. But all of a sudden, I'd be brought out of it because I had to breathe. And then I would be doing these different weird breathing techniques. I was trying to hold the breath in me as long as I possibly could. And then so I do like 2 exhales and then 1 inhale, 2 exhales, 1 inhale. Anyways, the point is I was fucking around with the breath, and that's the first time I was able to put myself into meditation, was through breath, which is why I go on and on about that's how you do it. That's what you do. If you want to meditate, that's why breathing is attached to it. You start focusing on your breath, you start going into a different part of, you start using a different part of your mind, your brain, you start tapping into the part of your body that controls your blood flow, your breathing, your growth, your cell crap, you're growing your hair, the growing of your facial hair, all that shit, your fingernails. You don't control none of that. I mean, part of your body does, so technically you do, but it's not part that you can actively take control of. You can take control of your breath, that's about it. So when you do that, it brings you into that same state where you're able to control, where you're able to go into meditation and be connected to that side of your body that controls all those things. And that's the same part of your body, in a very vague, simplistic manner of speaking, but that's the part of you that we want to influence in magic, to change our outcome, to change our life, to get circumstances to come to us. Therefore, when you go into meditative states like that and you get that cross communication, when you connect with that side, then you're opening up the pathways for you to do magic. It makes it a hell of a lot easier. And I'm not saying if you don't meditate, you can't do magic, because that's just silly. Everybody's already doing magic, even if they meditate or not. But the magic they're doing is all coming from the sympathetic nervous system is the one that you want to get in contact with. That's the one that calms you, relaxes you, gets the digestive process going, shit like that. And the autonomic nervous system, I believe is the name for it, something to that effect, a derivative of that, is the one that puts you into fight or flight. Okay, so that's when I keep saying people in fear, they're putting them in that state. Most people are already in that state most of the time anyways. They don't need to be put in fight or flight, but nonetheless. So when you get that cross communication, you're now able to influence that part of your mind. So that is very, very, very beneficial, very important for you to do. And it all starts with breathing. If it wasn't for breathing like that, for learning this, I wouldn't be meditating the way I am able to now. I wouldn't be able to put myself in these states. And there's certain breathing techniques I can do before I do ritual magic. Because ritual magic isn't doing, whenever they say to go into a subconscious, like dreamy state to do your magic, it's not like meditation. Meditation is more trance-like, dreamy kind of state of no awareness. Whereas you want to be relaxed when you're doing your magic. You want to be in that. Because you can turn on that system, your sympathetic nervous system, without being in a trance or being in sleep. Most people think you can't. Most people think that's the one you go into when you go to sleep, and the other one's the one you're in your wake. It's the automatic one. And no, that's not the case at all. You can go into that one without being in a fucking trance, and that's what you want to do throughout the day. Whenever you're getting ready to go somewhere, you're nervous, you're worried, you got anxiety. Well, this is how you get rid of that. It's the way you get rid of that. It's super uber important to get rid of that. So I have something else quickly I wanted to say too before I started all that, but I can't quite remember what it was now. I'm sure it'll come back to me. But so this is my introduction. Even though yesterday was the introduction video, but this is why this is so critical and so goddamn important. Now, right now, like I said, they are attacking all these types, all these places, all these areas of us, our body, and we got to stop this shit. And one of the best ways to stop that is through breathing. If we start breathing correctly, if everybody starts breathing correctly, you'll see the massive changes in your life. You'll feel the effects right away, instantaneously. It's almost instant. And I got a bunch of TED Talks I'm going to refer you to and put links up for that you should definitely check out. There's a ton of them. They're so beneficial.